What if the clown who made the whole planet roar with laughter lived in dread of a single number, 13? What if his boyhood theater burned to cinders the very week he sailed for America, and he carried the smoke of that omen in his pocket for the rest of his life? What if his real-life romances read like Pulp Fiction? One lover bought off with a one-way ticket to Australia, another swearing he tried to bury her alive in the backyard under moonlight. And what if the greatest mystery in silent film history still hinges on a missing laundry delivery scene? A two real ghosts that collectors chase from Buenos Aires attics to Swiss bank vaults, convinced it holds the secret origin of a comedy Oscar. Imagine discovering that the man who invented the slow double take also kept a secret notebook of abandoned gags, now rumored to be locked in probate and worth a small fortune to any fan who can prove it's real. Stick around as we peel back the glittering curtain on Stan Laurel, the genius who feared he was cursed, loved too recklessly for Hollywood's comfort, and lost more than any punchline could hide. By the end, you'll know why a plain black telephone in a modest Santa Monica apartment became the most coveted hotline in comedy. How a single misplaced film reel still sends archivists halfway across the globe, and why the laughter this lanky Brit conjured a century ago refuses, stubbornly, gloriously, to fade. Arthur Stanley Jefferson arrived on the 16th of June 1890 in the quiet market town of Ulverston, Lancashire. His actor parents were always on the road, so little Stan was parked with devout grandparents who marched him to Holy Trinity Church on Sundays and let him roam the fairground stalls the rest of the week. Across the street sat the Hippodrome, a wood and canvas tent theater where his father workshopped slapstick sketches. Shortly after Stan's 16th birthday, he sneaked onto the stage of Glasgow's Britannia Panopticon and delivered a 5-minute pantomime so nimble that the manager pressed 2 shillings into his palm and told him to come back tomorrow. The performance bug bit hard, but fate delivered an omen. In 1910, mere weeks before Stan sailed for America with master impresario Fred Carno, the Hippodrome burned to the ground. Smoke billowed over Ulverston as the teenager stared from the train window, clutching a one-way ticket and wondering if the ashes meant he should turn back. Instead, he kept going, joined Carno's troupe, and bunked with a wiry fellow comic named Charles Chaplin. May Dahlberg, Stan's common law partner years later, swore that the name Stan Jefferson carried a built-in curse. 13 letters. Superstition ran deep in music hall culture, and Stan agreed to test fate no further. Overnight, he became Stan Laurel, hoping a fresh surname might outrun whatever heck smoldered behind him. But stepping off the Atlantic steamer set him on a collision course with the man who would become both rival and measuring stick. Between 1910 and 1914, the Carno troupe zigzagged across North America playing raucous sketches. Chaplin was the headliner, Laurel the understudy obligated to mimic Chaplin's every move in rehearsals so the show could go on if the star fell ill. Off stage, they remained cordial, but Laurel scribbled alternative gags in a battered notebook, determined not to die a copy of anyone, least of all Charlie. When Chaplin filmed kid auto races at Venice in 1914, Laurel watched from the crowd, absorbing how celluloid amplified small gestures. When Carno disbanded, Chaplin sprinted to Hollywood, while Laurel knocked around vaudeville circuits, forming the Keystone Trio, a name hijacked from the famous Keystone Cops to milk extra bookings. He toyed with a character called Skeeter, an elastic yokel with hair pointing every direction, and briefly impersonated Chaplin right down to the toothbrush mustache. But the bit rang hollow. Stan wanted something uniquely his. A silent screen sniff of destiny came in 1921. A two-reeler titled The Lucky Dog needed a fall guy robber. The studio paired Stan with a hefty Georgian actor named Oliver Babe Hardy. Their first face-off lasted barely 60 seconds, but audiences laughed loudest whenever the thin man's bewildered stare met the big man's slow-burn glare. That glimmer might have died if not for a saucepan of grease. Jump ahead to 1925. Hardy, now under contract at Hal Roach Studios, scorched his arm on hot grease while cooking, landed in the hospital, and left Roach scrambling for a replacement in Get 'Em Young. Stan, lately hired as a writer-director, was roped in front of the camera. By the time Hardy healed, the crew begged Roach to keep the pair together. Director Leo McCarey obliged, intentionally teaming them in Laurel and Hardy shorts that exploded from duck soup to the record-setting custard fight in the Battle of the Century, a pie melee using 3,000 pastries. The box office momentum was dizzying, but backstage tension simmered. Roach staggered the duo's contracts. Hardy's expired in 1942, Laurel's in 1938. It was leverage. If Stan balked, Roach could slide Hardy beside another clown. When Roach actually did so, casting Hardy opposite Harry Langdon in Zenobia, 1939, Stan erupted, sued, and eventually patched things up, but the friendship never fully repaired. Between takes, Stan fine-tuned scripts, timing Hardy's eye rolls to a metronome tick he kept in his vest pocket. He insisted every gag sprout from character, not props. He also fought for the undertalk principle, dialogue sparse enough that foreign markets could subtitle effortlessly, thus doubling returns. That instinct kept the duo alive during the 1929 switch to sound. Their first talkie, unaccustomed as we are, still relied on slamming doors and crashing china rather than witty quips. Yet studio squabbles were polite compared with the typhoon tearing through Stan's love life. Stan never officially wed May Dahlberg, but between 1919 and 1925, they lived like husband and wife. Producer Joe Rock thought May's temper ruined takes, so he bought her a ticket back to Australia and paid hush money. A dozen years later, she returned, sued Laurel for support, and tabloid scribes sharpened their pencils. By then, Stan had already married and divorced actress Lois Nielsen. Next came Virginia Ruth Rogers in 1935, and in a bizarre ping-pong, again in 1941, after a scandal-plagued marriage to Russian singer Ilyana Vera, aka Shuvalova. That union produced the most lurid headline of Stan's life. On a foggy night in 1938, neighbors heard shrieking from the Laurel Garden. Ilyana later testified that Stan, drunk and rage-soaked, dug a shallow trench, beckoned her closer, and threatened to plant her for good. She fled. Police intervened. Newspapers splashed "buried alive" across front pages. The DA declined felony charges, but the divorce decree labeled Stan habitual drunkard and docked him $6,500 in settlement. Studios panicked. New contracts carried sobriety clauses, and press agents crafted puff pieces. Stan visiting orphans, Stan signing Fan No 1 Million to repair the brand. Yet fans forgave. They believed, perhaps rightly, that the lanky comic's demons were rooted not in malice but in wounds far deeper. No wound cut deeper than the one delivered by fate in May 1930. On the 10th of May 1930, Lois Nielsen delivered a premature boy, Stanley Robert Laurel. Doctors warned he might not last the week. Stan alternated hours at the incubator and the set of Below Zero, pushing through takes with swollen eyes. 9 days later, the infant died. Stan sat in the hospital chapel for hours, refusing food. He rarely spoke of his son afterward, yet crew members noticed a new melancholy drift through even his sunniest performances. Whenever he heard a baby crying off camera, he'd pause, head bowed until the sound faded. The grief flowed into work. Gags grew gentler. Shows of affection between Stan's on-screen persona and Hardy's became more brotherly, less confrontational. And on tour, Laurel grew almost compulsively generous, slipping cash to stage hands, tipping cabbies double, perhaps paying forward the joy he could no longer feel at home. Still, career triumph beckoned. The duo's won Oscar, an epic world tour, and a final crack at Hollywood independence. In 1932, The Music Box earned an Academy Award for Best Short Subject thanks to an absurd premise, hauling a piano up 133 concrete steps in Los Angeles' Silver Lake district. Tourists still trek those Music Box stairs, reenacting Stan's pratfalls. Flush with success, Laurel and Hardy embarked on a 15-country European tour in 1932 to 33. Crowds jammed train stations. Swedish fans pelted them with flowers. German police wove human chains to hold back delirious throngs. Stan kept a pocket diary, jotting odd phrases in local languages so the pair could greet every audience in its own tongue, an early lesson in global marketing. By 1941, restless to control their scripts, the team signed with 20th Century Fox for 10 features in 5 years. Shock, Fox hired them only as actors. No script rewrites, no editing room visits. Stan bristled, but the deal paid well and America wanted comfort during wartime. The features, Jitterbugs, The Dancing Masters, did brisk business, though critics sniffed at diluted slapstick. Behind closed doors, Laurel smuggled new bits onto cue cards moments before the camera rolled. Fox quietly relented, letting the boys polish scenes, and the films improved. But age, health, and a creeping sense that the act might outlive its spark staged a quiet coup. By 1945, Hardy struggled with heart issues. Stan's diabetes flared. Doctors warned both to rest, yet they signed onto a Franco-Italian co-production, Atoll K, 1951, hoping to recapture magic. Production was a nightmare. Bad English translations, tropical storms, mismixed medication that ballooned Hardy's weight, and emergency kidney treatment for Stan. The finished film crept into theaters re-edited under at least 4 alternate titles. Critics panned it. Stan called it the worst picture we ever made. They toured British music halls once more in 1953. The crowd still howled, but between shows, Stan napped in a backstage cot hooked to an insulin syringe. Then came the hammer blow. On the 7th of August, 1957, Oliver Hardy died after a massive stroke. Laurel, recovering from his own heart scare, was too frail to attend the funeral. He muttered, "Babe would understand," and shut the curtains. Offers cascaded, cameos, television specials, even a guest spot opposite Jerry Lewis. But Stan refused every single one. "I can't work without him," he told an agent, "because there's no me without us." While one half of the act slipped into history, the other half became the guardian of its memory and the keeper of its greatest mystery. For decades, the battle of the century survived in fragments. Reel 1 in archives, Reel 2 seemingly vaporized. In 2015, historian John Mersalis unearthed Reel 2 in a private collection. Restoration labs pieced the short back together, and in 2020, the Library of Congress enshrined it in the National Film Registry. Yet one title still torments devotees, Hats Off, a 1927 two-reeler featuring Stan and Ollie lugging a washing machine up the very stairs that later hosted the Music Box. All prints vanished after 1930. Rumors persist. A nitrate copy lost in a defunct Buenos Aires cinema. A 9.5mm fragment traded at a Paris flea market in the 1960s. A mislabeled can in a Swiss archive, none verified. Online forums dedicate threads to Hat Watch. Every estate sale listing old film reels triggers a frenzy. In 2024, a Dutch collector claimed to possess 5 seconds of leader tape with the film's title card. Experts deemed it a clever forgery, but the drama spiked hashtag Dower Find Hats Off to 2 million TikTok views within a week. Meanwhile, boutique label Flicker Alley launched Laurel and Hardy, Year 2 on Blu-ray in 2024, promising 4K scans, newly translated intertitles, and commentary recorded in English, Spanish, and Japanese. Proof the brand still sells across continents. Yet the most surprising relic of all didn't gather dust in a vault. It rang through an ordinary telephone. After Hardy's death, Stan moved into the Oceana apartments facing Santa Monica Beach. He listed his phone number in the directory on purpose. Fans rang at 2 a.m. If insomnia plagued him, he answered. Jerry Lewis visited, notebook in hand, and left with gags later woven into The Bellboy, 1960. Dick Van Dyke cold called, got invited for tea, and ended up portraying Stan in a 1963 sitcom episode. Even young Steve Martin tried the number. By then, Stan's nurse screened calls, but Martin claims she relayed a personal note. Keep your face calm, let your body do the ridiculous. In 1961, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences gave Stan an honorary Oscar for creative pioneering in cinema comedy. He watched on TV, chuckled that his bow tie wasn't straight, and phoned Danny Kaye afterward to thank him for accepting in his stead. Director Stanley Kramer begged Stan to appear in It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, 1963, alongside Buster Keaton. Laurel considered, then declined. Acting without Babe felt like a trespass. Kramer shot a background plate with the stand-in wearing Stan's bowler, but even that cameo was snipped in the final cut, replaced by Jack Benny tipping the hat in homage. January 1965. Doctors found a mouth infection. Tests hinted at cancer. February 6th, he suffered a small heart attack. On the morning of February 23rd, nurse May Reeves brought tea. Stan sipped, chuckled at a comic strip, leaned back in his armchair, and whispered, "I'd rather be skiing." The nurse, puzzled, asked if he'd ever skied. No, he smiled, but I'd rather be skiing than doing this. Moments later, he passed peacefully at 74. His funeral at Forest Lawn drew surprisingly few Hollywood elites. Industry chatter had shifted to mod musicals and spy flicks, but those present, including Dick Van Dyke and Buster Keaton, wept openly. Van Dyke's eulogy ended with a simple line: "He made the world smaller by making it laugh together." Within months, British cinemas re-released curated silent shorts. A UK poll crowned Laurel and Hardy greatest screen comedy team of all time. The curse appeared broken. Fast forward to 2023. A TikTok account uploaded grainy footage labeled Laurel and Hardy Bloopers 1932. Viewers shared, historians groaned. The clip was actually 1940 stock from A Chump at Oxford. Still, the post clocked 8 million plays. Influencers color-grade classic bits, splice them with EDM tracks, and loop Hardy's exasperated catchphrase, "Why don't you do something to help me?" into reaction memes. 2024 saw AI models deepfake Stan into Fortnite dances. Some fans loved it, others called foul. The debate highlights an irony. 100-year-old slapstick is easier to remix than modern CGI epics because the physical humor transcends dialogue. Restorers now feed nitrate scans into neural networks that deflicker and upscale frames without scrubbing away film grain. The upcoming Year 3 Blu-ray, slated 2025, teases a reconstructed orchestral score for Their Purple Moment, using Laurel's handwritten music cues found in an Illinois attic last summer. And that missing diary. In 2022, a London auction catalog listed Notebook, attributed to S. Laurel late 1950s, unverified contents. Bidding spiked to £120,000 before the lot withdrew for further authentication. Rumor says it contains aborted ideas for a Laurel-only one-man film. If genuine, it might rewrite everything scholars believe about his post-Hardy intentions. For now, the Notebook languishes in legal limbo, fueling conspiracy threads on the subreddit Lost Films. A burned theater, a lingering superstition, a labyrinth of marriages that collapsed like slapstick props. A son who slipped away after just 9 days, and a partner whose death switched off the spotlight. Stan Laurel's biography could have been scripted as pure tragedy, yet time after time he flipped calamity on its head, spinning every stub toe into a punchline the whole world could share. He invented the slow double take, the delayed reaction yelp, the hypnotic eyebrow wobble. He mapped out gag physics so precisely that today's stunt coordinators still mark their storyboards with Laurel beats when timing a perfect pratfall or pie hit. Look closer, and the so-called 13-letter curse starts to look less like doom than rocket fuel. Maybe the Omen really did follow him. Maybe every burned set, broken heart, and lost reel was part of the hex. But instead of crumbling, Laurel inflated the curse like a balloon, climbed aboard, and floated straight into legend. A full century later, his DNA still ripples through pop culture, in TikTok loops that turn his falls into EDM drops, in 4K restorations where each custard pie lands sharper than ever, and in every odd couple comedy, from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles to Rush Hour, that borrows his blueprint of a baffled beanpole, forever tethered to an exasperated heavy. So here's the part where you enter the story. Do you think Hats Off, that phantom two-reeler, will ever burst from an attic trunk? Or is its very absence the magic ingredient that keeps collectors on the hunt and myths alive? And what about the rumored notebook of unfinished gags? Does it sit forgotten in probate, or has someone already cracked it open? Drop your theories below, share this video with your favorite comedy nerd, and then, seriously, check your closets, basements, and shoeboxes. The next rattling film can you open might hold the final bow Stan Laurel left for us, ready to roll one more roaring laugh across the years.